Everyone, thank you so much for fitting in a short presentation. I'll be trying to go as quickly as possible through it, but we're really impressed with all the thought that people had about the data coordination platform. I want to try to give a little bit of a presentation to give more clarity on what it is and how it's being currently concepted so that we can continue that conversation. So I do appreciate your time today. All right. So the HCA community is a space of vibrant innovation. You've proven that with the presentations that you've had in the last 2 days. There's a lot going on, and you don't want to be constrained by that. You want to be able to be creative and do your science and get your publications out there and communicate to each other. And so I think that the first presentation in this set of presentations really clarified in a lot of ways, and like I couldn't have paid someone better to set up the differences between making a publication and making an atlas, right? And so in that space of making your own publication specific to your science, you should be unbounded in your creativity and innovation. That's going to really inform in a lot of ways the things we can do. A lot of the algorithms that would be useful potentially in making an atlas, longer term, will be created in this space of making a publication and such. So within this huge space of innovation, the data coordination platform focuses a lot on the creation of the atlas. And so this is this other use case, this other thing, this data curation to create a longer term product. And so there's a lot of people that are out there doing these, working and making the data and the analyses that will be involved with that. And we really focus on those people that are contributing data to be used with the atlas and also being able to access that data, like currently right now at least, and be able to give data so that you can take that data and you can continue doing analyses on top of that to create your annotations and interpret and give that a valuable scientific interpretation. And so for the data coordination platform, this is, if you went to the website, this is what it looks like, but I want to sort of go behind this and sort of see what's the guts and sort of talk about data flowing through it, because it gives you a good, I think, a sense, intuition of actually, what's being built. Now this is, we just went live with this year. It's a baby, right? But it takes a village to raise a child, and I'm hoping your voices will be a part of that village as we go. And so I'm going to describe where we're at now, and then I'm hoping after that we can work together to see where we're going to go. And so what is the data coordination platform? So for the first bit of thinking about data, going through this space here, at the very top is the space where data is submitted and ingested to the system. This isn't that you would send your samples to some big data center and that data center sequences it for you and does all those kinds of things. We know with single-cell genomics that it's really important that the people that understand the tissue and understand the biology have it in their hands and they're doing the sequencing and the sample prep and getting it together. Because you can see so many, this resolution is so high, you see so many kinds of effects whenever you're handling the image wrong. You really have to understand the aura of the tissue that you're working with. And so because of that, it's a highly federated space where people would work with their own samples and their sequences, and at that point it'd be submitted to the system. And so after that point, you'd work with data wranglers, and these are real people that you get, that they're there to interact and help with getting the data in. And during this process, there's a level of curation where we have standard metadata, and we have data standards where the data and metadata are validated against. And if it doesn't meet those things, that you'll have a person there working with you to get you to the point where it is. And so that's the first step of the process, after which the data is then stored. So the data is stored into cloud native environments. Currently right now it's AWS and GCP. We put it in both spaces so that people working one on the other could have access to it, and this is an extensible backend. Nonetheless, at that point, technically, people can actually see the data and work with the data if they need to through this sort of like the programmatically, and then also it's made available in the portal that you saw earlier for people to be access. So if that data ends up having a pipeline for analysis in the system, automatically that pipeline is triggered to run, and so it starts performing analyses. If it doesn't, then we'll have the data ready and available, so when the pipeline comes online, we'll just trigger all the data and it will run through as well. But either way, we want to make sure people have access to the data as we have it. So with the pipelines, these are ran. We'll speak a little more about sort of how you can be involved with pipelines, but these are modular, these are portable. We're hoping you can use them in lots of different kinds of environments, and they're cloud scalable and native. So after the data goes through the pipelines, and it's also brought back through validation again and in the same storage space. We also have to be validated. We don't get a pass. And then it's brought into the data browser, which I showed a little earlier. And so at that point, one can download either data or they can drive data depending upon if we have a pipeline for it at that time. And so of the kinds of access patterns that are available, firstly, people can look at a GUI, at a website, and download things, but also we have access to programmatic interfaces as well, and some guidelines on how you can use them, or at least some guidance on how you can use them. So we're hoping to make sure both kinds of accesses are helpful, depending upon how much data you're trying to grab. I skipped over matrix server for just a moment. I'm going to come back to that, but I also want to highlight that I think it's a really important part of this to be aware of is that in this space, it's an open system so that you can attach yourself to it. So we've already seen some really great examples, for instance, of portals that could, for instance, attach and work off the data, like the development work that we saw earlier in this session. It'd be really cool to be able to see those visualizations in the browser attached to the system and then working off of data into the actual, from the actual DCP itself. You can do that. It is possible. And we're beginning to attach some portals now as demonstrations for that. So if you're thinking of that kind of space here, especially with the HCA-Asia, for instance, if you want to have a branded space and you want to be able to show your science, it's very possible. So the last thing is just to be aware of is something we call the matrix service, and I think it harks back to these matrices. So the matrices are an important part of I think the most important thing people tend to want to get from at least the transcriptomics data. And so these are features by observations or genes by cells. And as you can see here on the right, if a study will be indicated if it has a matrix or not, if it's been processed or not at that point. And with that, you are able to select the studies that you're interested in, and then you can request the matrix and it will actually concatenate it for you and make it a lot easier for you. Also, it could let you select what kind of format you want. There's a couple options for you. We're just trying to make it as extremely easy as possible to be able to get to that piece so that you can move forward on your analyses. And so you can see here that this is what it would look like once you select for it. And it gives you a little feel about how many cells, for instance, will be in that matrix. And you can access it through programmatically as well, still trying to make sure that you can do all these things in batch and bulk. So that's sort of the roadmap of what data looks like as it runs through the system. And I want to just highlight very quickly certain pieces of it, of how to sort of get involved with them and how to make sure that they're more tangible and they feel more interactive to you. So firstly, for contributing data, if you're interested in contributing data, Data Wrangler team is an email for it. And so the normal process would be that you would email them to start the process. However, today they're actually here. And so if you are interested in talking about data wrangling, there's two things. Firstly, in general, you can talk to Clay. Clay, this is Clay. So if you have a question about submitting data, however, during lunch, they're going to be sitting near the 10X machine, right, at the table. Paris, look for Paris. Talk to her, right? If you have data you want to submit to the DCP that would be helpful for the Atlas, tell us about it. If you don't think you can submit it, just tell us about it. We want to hear what the blockers are then. Let's just investigate and understand this maze, all right? Also, for metadata, we really have vivid metadata because we know how it's important. Everyone's talked about it, how important that is. You have to be able to do your analyses, understand batch effects, use them for covariates. So we try to be very community-facing in this. The metadata is publicly available, but it is big and it's lush, and so sometimes it needs a little bit of guidance, or at least initiation. So Marian, that's Marian. If you have a question about our metadata, you specifically has a person now to talk to. Right now, you can talk to Marian. All right. So then we have pipelines. So pipelines these are cloud-native pipelines. They're created in modular ways that you yourself can leverage. So we run them automatically for any data that's in the system that's appropriate for the pipelines. However, if you are a programmer, you can go to GitHub and grab things. You can see us develop them as they're happening, completely transparent. If you're a computational biologist in like DocStore, you can go to DocStore and grab the stuff. If you don't know how to do all this programming and you just want to run the pipelines, we have places for you to do that as well. Now, if there's data in the DCP, we run the pipelines for you. But if you have other data somewhere else, and you want to run that pipeline, you want to grab data from the DCP and put it into a custom space to run some kind of custom pipeline, you can do that too. All that's available. This is an example of a portal being attached to the DCP to enable that. So if you are interested in pipelines, the person to go to is Kylie. Kylie, Everyone see Kylie? All right. So for these pipelines, it's important to remember we're not going to try to standardize your lives. It's not really what we're doing, right? So most of these pipelines, they stop at a feature by observation matrix. And the reason for that is because in a lot of ways, that's what people can agree on. After that, can you agree on normalization and clustering? I bet you can. I would like you to. And when you do, we'll put that into the pipelines and move it forward so you can start agreeing on other things in our space. But that's sort of what we're trying to do. We're not trying to standardize your life. We're trying to do what we know is necessary to get you to the point where now you're having your conversation. Great. Also, as far as a lot of these other spaces, the data browser and the CLI and the matrix service and stuff, you're not making these things, right? So you're like, well, how can I be involved? Of course you can, because you're the user. So you're the scientist, you're the important piece of it. If those things don't work, we don't want to make them. So please, if you're interested at all in telling us how to do our jobs better, that's an email for you. We've had people in this audience, actually, that have been engaged in this of close interaction with asking questions, do things work for you and such like that. So please, if you have an opinion, give it to us. All right. And so lastly, I mentioned before, if you have an analysis portal, you could actually attach things to it, the system, and use it as a backend to do your cool work. Talk to me. I'm happy to talk you through it. We've had a couple of successes so far. So I'll try to keep this pretty quick. And I just want to give a big thank you to everyone for just really, there's been a lot of really great ideas and conversation about the DCP at this meeting, and I really appreciate your time is valuable in what you're doing here. And so just giving us some of that time, we really appreciate it.